that dream is green. And I don't mean material things. Freedom to the land, child, woman, and man. As we take up for what we stand. Better days and better nights. As we stand and unite. We're one and the same. Why is it so hard not to point and to blame? Better sheet, get our houses in order and we'll see the peace. There are steps that we must take if we wanna see.
I see my people rising, no more stopping us. Couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us.
The sake of us, the sake of us.
I see my people rising, no more stopping us. Couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us. No more failing, telling me beneath. What a beautiful moment, and a sight I can't wait to see. Even if I miss it, at least I wasn't part of the mission. Changing lives of men, women, and children. All glory goes to He that causes us all to be. Oh, and if they're thinking we can, we show them that just as long as we stand. A monument, we the people can't be broken as long as we stay focused. I see my people rising, no more stopping us. Couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us. For the sake of us. I see my people rising, no more stopping us. Couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us. I see my people rising, yeah.
Shalom, shalom lekulam, shalom lekulam, Shmina Sikarashi Shema, or Chief Prince Shema, and I have none other than Chief Prince Zabulon Belewi Hadekia. Shalom, shalom, Adoni.
Hallelujah, shalom ubrako b'Hashem Yah. What's good?
Hallelujah. Welcome everyone. This is another segment of Sage Talk. It's going to be a lot. This segment is going to be powerful, going to be speaking on a lot of different things, and today so happened to be a topic concerning someone by the name of Abba Bibbens. Some of you may know him, most of you may not. How you feel about that, Chief Prince?
Well, you already know how I feel about that. I mean, you know, our people have a tendency to forget. We have a tendency to, you know, to forget, to want to ignore and sweep under the rug those who came before us and who have established a platform that allows us to freely speak this truth that we talk about. These men and women, they grinded, they lived, and ultimately died for what we casually speak as truth. So it's very important that we always bring forth the memory of these individuals. The same way we speak about Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we need to speak about our contemporary fathers and mothers. So shows like this is always important.
Kane, I think that was an excellent point that you brought out towards the end as well. All of it was excellent, but especially towards the end, you know, many of our, and I often talk about this, and I think that we don't bring it out enough, and that is we supposed to stand on the shoulders of those before us, and those before us don't just end with thousands of years ago. It is also including those that started it here in America as well, because without them, most of us wouldn't know what we know today, or the Most High using them, most of us wouldn't know who we are today. And we tend to forget, as you just stated. So um, people need to understand that. And I think that Abba Bibbens is one of the ones that's going to be important to speak about. There's going to be others that we're going to be speaking about as this segment continues to go each week. But I mean, let's get started. Let's get started. So, who is Abba Bibbens? I guess that's the question. Who is Abba Bibbens? Is that a good place to start?
Oh no, absolutely. And obviously it's going to be a bit of a, I guess, a controversial way to start off the show, because to be honest with you, who Abba Bivens is really depends on who you ask. Um, Unfortunately, there are those in this walk uh, who may, you know, let's be honest, they may have reasons to block this man's memory out of existence. Others may want to vilify him as, as being irrelevant because he maybe did not have or enjoy the popularity of other Israelite leaders of that time, of the time that he lived in. Uh, and of course, those who directly benefited from the labors of Baba Bibbins via Israeli Tanakh School, ISUPK, and those schools that came from him. There's always going to be, a very weird kind of interaction when it comes to Abba Bibbins. Me personally, because I'm a historian and I don't, I was not a direct member of ISUPK. I don't really have any axe to grind with the original leadership or anything like that. My job is to only look at the history, look at the facts and the evidence that we have before us, and then to pretty much construct or reconstruct who this man is, just based on his writings, based on the testimony of individuals who are contemporaries with him. So let's start off with that, and I'll start off with going back to I'm going to make a very controversial statement, and that is that I personally view Abba Bibbins as, for the time that he operated in, he was the Shem, the equivalent of Shem of the Bible, in the sense that he is one of the one of the connecting fathers that bridged modern Hebrew Israelite thought with the previous generations of Israelite thought going back into the 1880s. Why do I say that? Because Abba Bibbins was an early student of Prophet Sherry. Prophet Sherry, for those of you who maybe not familiar with him, he was he is considered the forerunner of what is now considered Hebrew Israelite thought, as far as the awakening of Negroes in America being the children of Israel, and that we should depart from the churches, depart from anything that wasn't rooted in the Old Testament. Prophet Sherry came out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was a railroad worker, and he taught in 1886 that he had a vision that the Most High had revealed to him these truths about the Negro being Israelites, that, of course, Christ was black, and all of these different things that we now teach today. And he taught this in the 1880s, in the late 1880s, early 1890s. After he departed from Chattanooga, Tennessee, he set up his main congregational grouping in Philadelphia, and that's where he pretty much established everything from the early 1920s all the way up to the 60s. Abba Bibbins was an early student of Prophet Sherry's when Prophet Sherry migrated to Philadelphia. According to Abba Bibbins' own testimony, he had received the truth and was teaching the truth before World War One. So this lets us know that his interactions with Prophet Sherry go back very, very early. Um, and Prophet Sherry went through these various schools of thought, whether it was Prophet, I mean, not Prophet Sherry, but Abba Bibbens went through these various schools of thought via Prophet Sherry, via Rabbi Leon Richelieu out of Brooklyn, New York, uh, via he was a contemporary of Arnold J. Ford's. He eventually went into the Commandment Keepers, which was started by Rabbi Matthew, who was a student of Arnold J. Ford's. So Abba Bibbens was a contemporary with all of these movers and shakers in the early version of the Hebrew Israelite paradigm. And he connected the old world of Israelite thought with the modern day thought, where now you have Benny Zakin, rising up out of Brooklyn and out of Chicago, and him making the connections to Benny Zakin via elders that came out of Benny Zakin, like Chief of Chiefs Naphtali, read the book Daniel, and other elders as well. Um, so starting off with that platform in mind, uh, Abba Bibbins is very important for connecting the old world Israelite thought, which was still under that whole kind of Black Judaism kind of vibe, and he connected it into the modern era of Benny Zakin, and in the introduction of the turbans and the cultural dress and things of that nature. So he was that forerunner and that connecting individual that brought us into the modern era of the 60s and the 70s of Israelite thought.
All right, I know that you have mentioned too that he had relations, or whatever verbiage we might want to use, with ISUPK. Can you go a little more into that? I'm not sure if this is the time we want to bring that out or not, but if it's doable, what's his connection with ISUPK?
Yeah, absolutely. His connection with ISUPK is it's that question. It's a loaded one because there has to be. It's loaded because we have to clarify a couple things. The first thing we have to clarify is that Abba Bibbins did not live to see ISUPK. What Abba Bibbins did live to see, he when he departed from Commandment Keepers during the early '60s, because he started to grow kind of tired of the whole Black Judaism and his connections with Benny Zakin and the whole cultural transformation that was going on among our people during that time period. He decided to start his own school, and the school was the Israeli Tanakh School, located obviously in Harlem. And his connections with ISUPK was that ISUPK was started by the students, the original students that Abba Bibbins had raised up in Israeli Tanakh School. So that included um, a man named Ariel Ben Yehuda, who later on became Chief High Priest Ariah. Chief High Priest Ariah's father, Yahweh, um, Moshe Ben Kareem, who eventually became the de facto leader of the original ISUPK, and ultimately House of David. Then, of course, you have other members like Ash Ben Yehuda, who I definitely got to give honor and respect to that elder, because he provided a lot of the information that now connects us to Abba Bibbins. A lot of information that I received directly and through secondhand interaction with individuals who knew him. So Abba Bivens started the Israeli Tanakh School with this core, this core group of students, and that school flourished until the early '70s, up until the time that Abba Bivens was attacked, was beaten brutally in Newark, New Jersey, um, ironically by the same Islamic masjid or mosque that sanctioned the assassination of Malcolm X. Ironically, so after Abba Bibbens uh, his death from that particular beating. And some say that he passed away in 71. Others say 72. It's kind of hard to determine exactly what year because those records now are kind of somewhat obscured. I mean, there's a record of it, but there's a lot of people who argue against the exact year. But with that said, eventually the students that Abba Bivens raised up in the Israeli Tanakh school, they chose not to continue that school. They chose to take what they had learned from Abba Bivens and obviously the elders of Beni Zakin who were working with Abba Bivens and trying to introduce more cultural elements to their lifestyle and to their worship. They decided to take everything that they had learned under that tutelage, and about 6-7 years later, they created the ISUPK, the first wave of ISUPK. So Abba Bivens, I would not say that he was the father of ISUPK, but he was the grandfather. Because, like I said, he did not live to see ISUPK be born or created, but his students were the ones who actually created ISUPK, and much of Abba Bivens' teachings that existed verbally and in written form were amalgamated into ISUPK doctrine and expanded on. And slowly but surely, his name was kind of removed from a lot of their history to the point where now it's very rare if you ever hear anyone talk about Abba Bibbens. But that's the connection with ISUPK. It was, again, his students were the ones who created ISUPK about 5, 6, maybe 7 years after his death and the ultimate closing of the Israeli Tanakh school.
So, listening to you speak right now, I couldn't help but to think of the math. Right? You said that they went back and forth with when he transitioned. I think you said 70, 71, or 71 and 72.
Yeah.
One of those two numbers. And then you said that ISUPK kind of rose up probably about 5 to 6 years later or after his death. So the claim that, and this is not to, go against ISUPK or anything like that, but didn't they said that they've been around since 69 or something like that?
Yes, and that's the that's the unfortunate part of all of this, and that is that on one hand, while many of them, and I don't want to say they because not all members of ISUPK treated Abba Bibbens this way, so I'm not going to make a blanket statement about the organization, obviously, but there were certain individuals who while trying to erase him from their memory, they still want to claim that the ISUPK started in 1969, but that was when the Israeli Tanakh school was established. So you can't reject Abba Bibbens in the Israeli Tanakh school on one hand because it was kind of dealing with certain elements of the commandment keepers form of Judaism, but then when it's convenient to try to claim that you had your origins in 1969. 1969, the school ISUPK didn't exist. You can't find any charters. You can't find anything under ISUPK. The only school that was set up at that time that was connected to Abba Bibbens was the Israeli Tanakh school, and that lasted until his death, his official death in 1973. So there was no ISUPK in 1969. And again, this is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And again, this is not a shot to anyone at ISUPK because I understand that many of those brothers and sisters who now are looking back, they can only go off of what they've heard from one source, and that source is, um, you know, maybe I don't want to just say General Yohana. It might have came originally from him. It may have came from elders. It may have came from Tazadakia. It's no way to really tell who started the 1969 connection. But the one thing that we do know for a fact is that uh, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge was not in existence in 1969 because Abba Bibbens had the Israeli Tanakh School.
Right.
So that's history. That has nothing to do with feelings or emotions or allegiances. This is just what the history says.
And this is what Sage Talk is about. I mean, um, we're gonna go into a lot of things, especially some things pertaining to or dealing with your book. And Abba Bibbens happens to be in there. This information that you're bringing out is actually up in there as well. So again, we don't know who started that idea of it being 1969. We get it, we understand it because it's still a connection to Abba Bibbens. But as you stated, you can't have one and not have the other. So history is important. One thing about our people, like you like to say, and you bring out often with Ezra acted and brought back what we needed to know. He gave us the good and the bad. He brought that history and made it balanced. A false balance is an abomination. So if we're talking about Sage Talk and we're trying to bring information on our past sages, then we want to bring out what's true about them. All right. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So what about anything pertaining to like his, I don't know if this is something we speak on or want to speak on, but, family life, anything pertaining to family with Abba Bibbens, if you think it's necessary to bring up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know a whole lot about the early days of his family. Like a lot of his family history, I'm not going to say it was hidden. I'll just say that maybe he just wasn't big on talking about his personal family life or whatever. But what we do know about his family is that uh, when he was still stationed in Philadelphia, uh, that he had got to a point where, according to the testimony, he had gotten to the point where he felt that he was being called to go move on from Prophet Sherry. So this was um, early night. This might have been mid. This was after World War II. Might have been like 1946, 1947. He was he said that he had kind of grown a little weary of where he was at in Philadelphia, and he felt like the Lord was calling and moving him to go to New York City. And apparently, there was another brother with him who said, "Yeah, we're gonna uh, go up and follow the voice of the Most High, or the voice of the Lord. Go to New York City." We do know that Abba Bibbins initially left his wife in Philadelphia, and at some point took his son with him. Uh, his son, William Henry Bibbins, took his son with him. Now, there's some other testimony that says that he left his son as well. That again, that could be true or false. I don't, we can't really tell at this point. But at some point, his son did join him uh, in New York, and his son, ironically, was part of worked with him in writing a lot of the teachings that he was espousing. So, um, but what I find interesting from what we do know about his family is that after that move to New York, at some point, his wife joins him. So now it's the whole family. They're in Harlem. They are they're at Command and Keepers. Everything is fine. Um, and at some point, shortly after his departure from the Commandment Keepers and his establishing of the Israeli Tanakh school, he runs into he runs into a situation where he's being contacted by a group. And I'm trying to remember the Jewish group's name. Uh, but the name will come back to me. But there was a Jewish um, group that was initially set up to establish inroads with other Jews around the world. But during the late 60s, early 70s, the group's focus was on trying to convert Hebrew Israelites into mainstream Judaism. Like this was their actual mantra. Like this was their whole motto, was they were trying to have inroads with the Hebrew Israelites of that time and try to have conversations with them to convince them to join mainstream Judaism. Uh, Ironically and sadly, uh, something occurred, and we don't know how it occurred and why it occurred initially. But when the smoke cleared, uh, Abba Bibbens' wife and his son had joined that organization. They joined the organization against Abba Bibbens' will, or maybe even behind his back. Again, we're not sure, but the one thing we know is that Abba Bibbens taught a very specific ideology that was not in alignment with mainstream Judaism. And somewhere between the late 60s and the days or the weeks or months leading up to his death in 1973, at some point in the middle of that, his wife and his along with his son, but his wife strikes up a covenant with this Jewish organization. And in fact, she ends up becoming one of the leaders in that organization. And ultimately, we can say that his family allowed Abba Bivens' vision and his work to die.
Wow.
It was the ultimate form of betrayal. I mean, imagine your wife siding with the very organization that is planning your demise and the demise of all Israelites.
Mm.
It's almost like a Cleopatra, Mark Antony situation in ancient times.
Wow.
And so yeah.
Go ahead. For those that's coming in right now, if you're on YouTube, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you're just coming in, if you're on Facebook and you're just coming in, I'll give you a quick summary. You may want to start back from the beginning, but this is Chief Prince of Bullen. I've been led with Hideki, of course, part of Sage Talk that we'll be doing every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to be bringing up things that a lot of us as B'nai Israel, Israelites of today, right now, 2025, going into America's 2026, do not know. A lot of people don't know who Abba Bibbens is. A lot of people know the name, but don't know the history behind who Abba Bibbens is. So he brought out a few different things. He brought out when he was attached to Prophet Cherry, he brought out segueing and learning and coming around Benny Zakane. And I'll let him touch more on that if he wants to. He also brought out how he and his wife, he just spoke on his wife and his son. They transitioned from Black Judaism, right? He was in that realm and came out of that and created Israeli Tanakh School, if I'm not mistaken, right? Israeli Tanakh School in around 1969. And you all know that number. Some of you know that number, 1969. And his death when he transitioned around 1973 is when the students, right? So he called Abba Bibbens the grandfather of ISUPK because he didn't get to see the birth of ISUPK. But Israeli Tanakh School was created around 1969 by Abba Bibbens. His students, after the death of Abba Bibbens around 1973, 5 years after 1973 established ISUPK. So I just wanted to give that back story for those that's just coming in. Again, this is Sage Talk. Every Tuesday, we will be bringing out things. This is Chief Prince Bullen, and a historian of our time. We're going to be touching on a lot of different things. So I want to pass the mic back to you. You ended with the Jewish people. The Jewish people was trying to convert the Hebrew Israelites into their organization, and Abba Bibbens' wife and son moved to New York with him. But then they all of a sudden ended up being a part of that organization, either behind his back or whatever it might be. And that's where we left off at. So transitioning from that, he also wrote a book. Should we segue into the book now, or did you want to go somewhere else?
It's ultimately going to bring us right back to square one. So yeah, and I apologize. The name of the organization was called Hatsad Harishon, and it was it's a biracial nonprofit organization founded by white liberal Jews in 1964, whose sole mission was to infiltrate Hebrew Israelite groups in New York City with the intent of convincing them to convert to Judaism. This was their entire mission. So this was like the Israelite version. They were basically a Jewish version of the FBI. They were the white Jewish version of the FBI. Their sole intent was to infiltrate the Israelite movement and to convince them to transition to mainstream white Judaism. So they don't even care about black Judaism. They're trying to get everybody over to white Judaism. So yes, that's what that organization basically was. As far as his book is concerned, his book has been a huge topic of interest over the last few years. Mainly because there are individuals who I'm not sure who was responsible for discovering the PDF scanned version. I want to say it was an online. I forget his name, but I believe his first name is Abu. I'd have to check his name again. But he might have been the one who came across the PDF. Scanned PDF version of Abba Bibbens' book, Marks of a Lost Race. It still has on the back of the cover. It still has the stamp of Israeli Tanakh School. And the book, Marks of a Lost Race. This is what I call, these were the building blocks of what became ISUPK doctrine. One of the doctrines that he speaks of in his book that he wrote with his son, William Henry Bibbens. One of those doctrines is concerning, we spoke about this earlier, Donnie, and that is the book of Job 9:24, where it says the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So the wicked, so they're saying, yes, the wicked is obviously, is obviously the white man. He covers the faces of the judges. That means that he has removed the understanding of the law from the true Israelites. If it's not him, where and who is he? Abba Bibbens is the one who brought that into the modern Israelite world. This was a doctrine that Prophet Cherry once taught in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but Abba Bibbens had made it popular among the later generations in the 50s, going into the 60s as well. Much of the book, Marks of a Lost Race, and this is part of how we know how old the book is that the book was written prior to the ending of World War II. Because one of the things that we do notice is that in the book, he does not make any reference to who won the war. He only said that the war was happening. So obviously, the book was written prior to 1945. Um, and it's an interesting book. I don't know if many Israelites today would be able to read the book, without judging it, because obviously it's all King James version. A lot of this understanding was rooted in KJV, and some of the doctrines don't line up with the Hebrew text, and that's to be understood. It was what it was. Um, you know, anything that was written in the 1940s, I mean, we got to give it a little bit of grace. Um, but what's important about this book, more so than the book itself, is the book was hijacked, and I have to use that verbiage. Honestly, honestly, it was a hijacked situation where the book was written, only a few copies of it was ever published, because there was no ISBN number attached to it, so we know it wasn't mass produced. The book was lost for many, many years, but obviously ISUBK, um, when they were still the Israeli Tanakh school, they had a copy of it, and when they created the ISUBK, they took most of what the book Marks of a Lost Race was. They took most of the text and they turned it into one chapter of a much larger work that they developed called A Change of Worlds. So those Hebrew Israelites who came into the knowledge of being Israel via ISBK may remember that book um, in the late 80s, early 90s. Again, it was called A Change of Worlds. And Marks of a Lost Race was like just one portion of the work. But in the book itself, they don't give credit to Abba Bibbens as being the author. They say that Chief High Priest Ariah, Chief High Priest Yeshaya, and I want to say uh, Chief, I can't remember his title, but a brother named Kakamban, that they were the architects of the work. But again, since nobody remembered Abba Bivens' version of the book, nobody was there to contest it. There was no because there was nobody to say, "Hey, wait a minute," because the original book had never been published. So now that a copy has raised up in modern times, it now shows that no, this book was not manufactured in the late 80s, early 90s. In fact, it existed prior to World War II, and most likely in some version prior to World War One.
It's unfortunate, and I want to also segue, since we're talking about the book and everything, into before we move to another topic. I think that it's important that we segue into what you did for his name's sake, right? Being a historian that you are, which I think what you did was amazing. I don't even know a lot of historians that would do that. And with this specific topic dealing with Abba Bibbens, this is on a level of, wait for it, I know you're gonna say something crazy when I say this, because I just thought about it now. Even with the history book that you wrote for all of us here in the United States, which I think every Israelite needs to get this book, and I'm going to try to pull it up sometime today again. It's on the level of Ezra. Well, let me clarify what I'm saying. So, making sure the history of those before him, those before us, still lives, right? The putting things in place for all the different congregations and assemblies and the names that helped us to know who we are today. I have to say this because many people don't know this, and you're not going to say it about yourself. I have to say it. And these very books that you wrote is going to help those that comes after us, just like what Ezra did for us today. and for those, the first century, all that stuff was established due to him. So I think it's important that we're speaking on this topic. It's a reason we are. It's not to get on anything that on ISUPK or anything like that. It's to give the history of those who we may call certain sages of our time that helped us to get to where we are now. And I think that last thing I'm gonna say before we go into what you did, and I want you to speak on what you did for his legacy and why you did it. Speaking on his son and his shot, things of that nature. The fact that whoever decided did not include him in their works when he was the reason, basically, when you really think about it, the reason why IUCPK is even present is really it's upsetting. It's kind of disheartening. So I mean, I know a lot of people may not know about this. A lot of people, and even in IUCPK, may not be aware of this. But I think it's important for, and this is not being said for or towards them, but this is really being said and brought out to make sure that Abba Bibbens is remembered. So, can you tell us what it is was put on your heart to do in order for us to even know the things that you put up in the book?
Absolutely. And it's actually a very sad thing because I put this book together, not for for happy reasons, but more so as a lamentation, if you will. And I want to read the final words that I had written in 2023 in the introduction to this work, and I think it'll kind of capture my feelings about the work itself. And as a matter of fact, let me back up before I read that part. I think it would make much more sense to actually read the acknowledgments that I put in the beginning of the book. I'm gonna look, I'll just read the acknowledgement. I said, I would like to give honor and thanks to the elders that came before me, both passed on and alive, who dug up the earth and laid the foundation of the path that this generation walks upon today. Prophet F.S. Cherry, Elder William Crowdy, Robbie Arnold J. Ford, Leon Richelieu, Wentworth A. Matthew, Elder Warren Robeson, Ben Ami Ben Israel, Dr. Shaliach Ben Yehuda, Nasi Yaakov, among so many others. To my teachers, Prince Nathaniel, Chief Prince Zapor, and the late great Chief of Chiefs Naphtali. May the Most High bless and sustain his memory. Finally, to the elder, Eber Ben Yomen, affectionately known as Abba Bibbens, who lived for and ultimately died for the awakening of Black people in America and the Caribbean. This book is a testament to your dedication. May the Most High bless and sustain your memory. And what made this book necessary to quote unquote redact it and to put it back out, it's because you have a situation where this elder who labored from the early 1900s, like 1910, 1911 to 1973. This man labored over almost 80 years of his life trying to wake up African Americans in America. And of course, by extension, in the Caribbean. He spent his money. He did, whatever money that he could scrape together from his military background, from his businesses, his jobs. He did all of this trying to find the best way that he can to wake up his people. And to meet the end that he met a 80-something-year-old man, give or take, being beaten in Newark, New Jersey, out here teaching, just wanted to teach African Americans something better that can get them out of the muck and mire of their existence, to be beaten and then ultimately dying of those injuries. And while this is happening, your wife and children have abandoned your path, have abandoned the mission, and joined forces with the enemy, literally. And while that's happening, his students, instead of continuing his legacy, they allowed the Israeli Tanakh school to die right along with Abba Bibbens. And they went on, started their own school, respectfully, but started their own school. And therefore, Abba Bibbens, the man who was responsible for all of this, was relegated to a footnote in their history. I will say that there are people in the history of this world who time and history has not been kind to them, and Abba Bibbins is one of them. His family abandoned him, and so did his students. Almost as if his life and his work was in vain. When I saw the opportunity, because everybody kept saying, well, the book is in PDF form, and it's horribly scanned. Like the person whoever scanned the book, they weren't really worried about textual integrity. They just didn't care. They're just like, okay, we're just gonna scan it, and that's it. And and that's the end of the story. Nobody had access to this, to this great work that this man put together. And I said, well, I have a copy of this PDF. And so I retyped the entire book. I retyped it in clear font. Any typos, I corrected the typos, put it out so that the people can have in their hand a tangible piece of history, of lost history. That book, in my opinion, and I'm not going to try to put this on anybody else. I'm just going to speak it from my vantage point. That book, for us, for this generation of Hebrew Israelites, it's almost like how people felt when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 1940s. Because the same way the Dead Sea Scrolls helped connect the New Testament times to the quote unquote Old Testament times, it helped us weave together all of that history in between. This book serves that very same purpose. It connected all the way back to Prophet Cherry. It gave us a glimpse into the germinal or the fetal stage or the embryonic stage of the Hebrew Israelite movement, to see how the doctrine or the various doctrines, how they came into existence and how they had began to develop. And it gives us insight into how we have now interpreted these things. And so I wanted this book to be put out there so that people can, from a historical standpoint, they can bear witness to one of the lost patriarchs of this movement. We should be talking about Abba Bibbins in the same way that we speak about Ben Ami. We should be speaking about Abba Bibbins in the same way that we speak of Nasi Yaakov, the same way we speak of Rabbi Matthews, Rabbi Arnold J. Ford, Leon Richelieu, Warren Robeson, all of these elders, that we, past, present, and those who are coming up. We should be having this conversation, and we should be constantly thanking the Most High for the lives of our elders, but especially for Abba Bibbins, because unlike a lot of those other elders, this man's legacy was taken from him and buried. And so my purpose and my whole point of retyping that entire book and adding an introduction, and a preface to it to kind of give it some context. It was for that purpose. It was to give him a voice again because he literally died not having any heirs to his work. There is nobody right now alive that is carrying on that elder's tradition, that elder's work. In fact, I will give credit to, I'll take back what I'm saying, and I will give credit to one elder who actually is trying to do that, and that's Elder Maury Quanah Ben Yehuda, who um, was a direct recipient of the early teachings of the ISUBK, and he had connections with Ash Ben Yehuda, one of the first students um, of Abba Bibbens. And he actually is trying to, I don't know if he's still working on it or if he's completed it, but he's actually working to resurrect the Israeli Tanakh school on some level. So I want to give that elder salutations because he also understands the importance of not allowing a name in Israel to be blotted out from under the sun. So that was the point of this book, because he has Elder Abba Bibbins had no heir. He had no one to continue his work. His family left him. His students left him, and all he had to show for it was being beat practically to death in Newark, New Jersey.
Wow. Painting a picture of the events, each and every one of the events is really important. And I pray those that watch this back or watching it now is learning something about Elder Abba Bibbins and learning the importance of having knowledge about it. What is the name of the book that you're speaking of right now? What's the name for those that may be listening in? I could type it in the chat.
Yeah, the name of the book is Marks of a Lost Race by W. Henry and E. Bibbens, which again is William Henry Bibbens and Edward Bibbens. Edward Bibbens is Abba Bibbens. So again, it's called Marks of a Lost Race.
All right. I'm putting it in the chat for those that may be interested in seeing what it is that we're talking about. And not even just that, having this book as history for your home. So if you are on this path, a lot of us, we tend to buy these books, these history books that's important to us in our path here in the Americas. And we tend to add books, for our children, just for our libraries. This is a book that we want to have in there because, as he stated, out of everyone else, all of the individuals that we grab these books from or that's being spoken about, this sage, this elder is one of the ones that his works has been stripped away from him. It's outside of the person that Chief Prince just mentioned. No one's really outside of Chief Prince as well. No one's really pushing his legacy, his memory, and that's what we should be doing. It's okay to speak on things that has helped our people grow concerning those that were used by the Most High to do so. So it's okay to do that, let another man speak of you, right? So we want to make sure that we do that. Shalom to you, Gebert, Shakor, Israel. We appreciate you tuning in. Hope all is well with you in your home. But yes, very informational. And I've done heard this a few times, but every time I hear it, when Chief Prince speaks on it, it just really paints a broader picture. And I think again, so let me, you all heard so far what he just said, but those that's just coming in, if you have not heard the beginning, we're talking about Abba Bibbens. This is during Sage Talk. We're going to be bringing a lot of these things out. He was basically, as Chief Prince Abuna has stated, he was one of the ones that, or not one of the ones, the one that started Israeli Tanakh School, which is basically the father of ISUPK. And Israeli Tanakh School was formed in 1969. That's that year. But after his death, about 5 years after, 1973. So that would be 1978 or something around there. That is when ISUPK actually was erected.
Right. And even that, and again, and I try to be, as you know, because we both do this, we try to be as fair as possible. You know, we try
Yes.
to be fair, be balanced. Um, there are sources that I've seen, that I've heard from other individuals that suggested that ISUPK might have started in 1978.
Right.
I'm of the school of thought that it was 1981. The reason why I say one of the reasons why I say 1981 is because uh, if you read, and you know what, and that might be my maybe another project I work on. When you read the original um, text of not Marks of a Lost Race, but the work that ISBK generated, called A Change of Worlds. If you look at some of the writing, some of the things that they're referencing, and this is what archaeology, what archaeology and textual criticism does. They look at a text, or any particular finding, but especially in the form in the case of a text, they don't just simply read the text, but they look at other clues. They look at references. Does those work reference historical events outside of their worldview? So, for instance, if I'm writing a story on life in New York City, and I make a passing reference to 9/11, even if my book does not have a authorship date on it, whatever, we know, because of the reference to 9/11, that the book could not have been written earlier than 2001. Because if I'm referencing 9/11, that means that book would have had to have been written after September of 2001, because I'm referencing a historical event. But if I'm talking about life in New York City, and I make no mention of the World Trade Center situation, chances are the book was written before 9/11, because 9/11 was such a huge event that there's no way that you can't talk about 9/11 if you're talking about history of New York, unless it didn't happen yet. This is what we found out with the book, um, A Change of Worlds, is that there's certain references in the book that they reference to certain events that were going on in the world at that time, like in New York, and in the known world of that time. And the references that are made, none of those references, or those sources, go back prior to 1979. Are you catching? So if it
I'm getting it.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If the book was if they're saying that if the book was written, because I've heard people say that, oh yeah, the book was written in the 70s, whatever, like that. Well, if that's the case, then there should have been some things that were covered, but the book doesn't mention. There's certain things that the book doesn't go into. There's no reference. Um, there's actually no reference to ISUPK as a school. Like, usually, if you're talking about, let's say, if you're talking about the House of Balance.
I was just about to use me an example. If you
Right.
let me jump in real quick.
Absolutely.
It was something that was stated. I found out that was stated and had, kind of said that, we kind of moved and, had just started our own ministry. right now.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I wrote a book in I'm not 19. Wow. I wrote a book in 2021. I think it was 21. That's when I published a children book. And on the children book, it says Beth Mazan Publications. So if the book says Beth Mazan Publications in 2021, and someone says that we just started the ministry now, that wouldn't make sense if Beth Mazan Publications was already in 2021.
Exactly.
So yeah.
And that's right.
I've been around for years. Go ahead though.
No, indeed. And that's how we're able to look at a text and determine, okay, was this, does this organization exist at this time or in that time? To be honest with you, I don't argue anybody who says that they feel that that ISUBK as an organization started in 1978. I don't have a problem with that. It's like, okay, cool. Because again, we because the organization, and being fair, the organization could have existed in 1978, but they didn't incorporate it until 1981.
You broke up. You said it could have been. Say that again. It had broke up a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
Okay.
So I was saying that I don't argue with people who feel or who assert that ISUBK existed in 1978. I know a few brothers who stand 10 toes down on 1978. I'm fine with that because again, the organization might have been using the name ISUBK and teaching under that name in the late 70s, and maybe didn't incorporate until 1981.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you incorporated in 1981 doesn't mean that the organization didn't exist prior. It just means that on paper, 1981 is the date that I normally stick with because it gives us a concrete starting point. So I don't have a problem with anybody saying, maybe the late 70s, like 78, 79. That's fine. But the one thing we do know is that it wasn't 1969.
All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring out with Abba Bibbens? Do you think we laid a good foundation for those that's going to be watching these the Sage Talk episodes that we're going to be doing? Do you think we covered enough for them to get started in their own research on them, or even on having enough information about them to keep him embedded in their minds?
Yeah, I obviously, I would recommend anybody to check out the book. Not just for the sake of, not only because Abba Bibbens wrote it, but more so because it gives us insight into those infant stages of the Israelite movement. We always have these conversations, Adoni, about how we tend to take knowledge and understanding and these things, we take it for granted because we have Google, because we have Strong's Concordances, and because we have Brown Driver Briggs and ChatGPT and Grok, and we have all of these tools at our disposal, and that's fine, no doubt. I mean, we take full advantage of whatever tools that we can to get us to our end game. So I'm all for that. But I always like to go into these, into the works of these elders, because these elders wrote these books, they did this research with none of these tools at their disposal. And right. It's easy, it's easy to talk about how great your car is and not want to talk about Henry Ford. It's easy to be like, yeah, we like to talk about where we are and what we are doing but we don't want to go and say, well, this person is the reason why we even have this. And we have it at our disposal. All we have to do is just Google the information. Oh, there it is. These individuals had to take trips to synagogues in Tel Aviv. They had to go to Hebrew universities and go over here to Paris and go to these museums to get this information and go over here and the work that they had to put in. I'm really big on trying to make sure that those who invented the hammer are given their credit, because we sitting here and banging nails into wood, and these individuals created the hammer.
Yeah.
We need to give them their just due. Why? Because the day is going to come when we're going to want our just due, when we're going to want to be remembered for the work that we've been put in. And how would we feel if someone said, yeah, Chief Prince, Chief Prince Shema, he was all right. Yeah, the hell with all that. And then just sit there and act like the work wasn't actually done. I mean, imagine that. None of us wants to pass off, to pass away into oblivion. We want to be, as the ending of the book of Nehemiah suggests, we want to be remembered always for good.
That's right. And then not even only that, right? In addition to that, it's going to be a day, maybe not in our time, but it may be in our time, where all this internet stuff is going to disappear. And the only thing we're going to have, you all saw the Book of Eli with Denzel Washington. Do we not think that day may not come? It may. Books is the one thing that gives stories and history everlasting life.
Absolutely.
The dude that created Apple, can't think of his name right now. That's a shame. I'm trying to make a point. I can't even remember his name, but I know he created Apple.
Steve, was it Steve Unemployed?
Steve Unemployed.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Or just let's think of Moshe. Let's think of all our forefathers and our foremothers, or all our greats. So everybody that we could think of that we look up to in our literature, they are alive. Their memory is alive, first because of the Most High, Hamalek Elion. I'm gonna say that, but second, because he told them to write it down. He told them to write it down. So write it down so you can have it in your possession. If it wasn't for something being written down, we wouldn't have the scriptures right now. Why? Because Ezra would not have been able to redact it. He wouldn't have been able to do any of these things if it was not things in front of him to read. In addition to that, he had a lot of it in his head already too. But my point is, these things are important. So when this stuff shuts down, if it ever shuts down, having our own copies, our own books is very important, and we just keep that cultural understanding of literature and passing down literature for generations, our home, our families is going to keep that connection of our ancient forefathers and foremothers that was righteous. Is very important. Very important. So I was going to say, before I say anything else, make sure, if you haven't done so, you all, make sure you like this channel, House of Balance Network. Make sure you subscribe and make sure that you share, because there's a lot of things that's been said, and I'm not going to make a whole summary of it right now. Just go back to the beginning. I promise you it's going to be something that you're going to learn. And for those that haven't subscribed or on Facebook right now, when you're done, take the time, go on House of Balance Network and just subscribe and just share. We come on every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time going forward. Sage Talk. It'll be a topic every week. I wanted to bring something. Now, we kind of touched that. I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit. When I told you, when I saw an individual speaking on a topic. So I don't know if you want to speak on that for a minute or just bring that back another time and kind of close out. Let me know.
No, let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to bring something up, you all. I'm going to bring something up, and then I'm going to read it, and then I want Chief Prince, if you would, because you was going in earlier, on the information, because you have a lot more knowledge in that area from what I'm going to bring out. Give me 1 second. See if I can find it. Here we are. I'm going to read something to you all. It was an individual. I'm not going to say his name, but some of you may have seen the video. And I said, okay, I want to put something together in regards to this topic. And I was talking to Chief Prince about it, and he had a very, very, very interesting take. Not even interesting take. It was sound, but it was so interesting. And I don't know if he brings it out. I think we're going to have to bring it out one day, Chief Prince. You already know the Elohim of the, I ain't gonna say it, but I don't know if you ever think we should bring that out for the public.
Oh,
I
know. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not saying we're gonna do it today, but just trust me, when we bring it out, you all, if we bring it out, it's going to be something that's going to be an aha moment. It's going to be an aha moment. All right. So let's get to it. I'm going to read something, and then I'm gonna pass the mic to Chief Prince on this. But it was an individual. He was speaking on the flood, the Noah story, right? And he went into the comparison between Gilgamesh and the Noah story. So I got to put a little something together, and I often, when I put things together, I send it to those. Chief Principal who ordained me. I go to elders. I go to different contemporaries before I just put something in stone. Sometimes it'll be an agreement, and sometimes it'll be like, well, you know what? I don't have that stance, but I know why you went there. And that kind of gives me the okay to use that for my organization. But I always want to make sure I go most times to get sound and advice on certain things that can cause a ruckus in a community. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure we sound, we want to make sure we balance, and we want to make sure we're producing things that is as sound as possible. Here we go. Genesis and the flood, a response to the Gilgamesh comparison. All right. This document is designed to clearly and respectfully address the claim that the biblical flood account in Genesis is merely a later copy of the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh. While similarities between the accounts exist, similarity does not equal derivation. I'm definitely saying that wrong. What follows is a structured explanation demonstrating why the Genesis account stands as an independent ethics and historically rooted tradition rather than a borrowed myth. All right? I'm about to mute you. Hold on. Oh, man. So it's the purpose is, so what follows is a structured explanation. This is what I'm bringing forward, demonstrating why the Genesis or Bereshit account stands as an independent, ethical, and historically rooted tradition rather than a borrowed myth. Number one, similarity does not mean identity. Both Bereshit or Genesis and the Mesopotamian flood traditions contain common elements: a flood, a chosen survivor, a vessel, animals preserved, birds released, and a post-flood offering. These shared elements are often used to argue direct copying. All right, keep that in mind, you all. However, shared elements alone only demonstrate a shared memory or cultural awareness of a catastrophic flood event, not plagiarism. But I'm sure Chief Prince is going to speak on that once I'm done reading. The differences between the accounts are substantial and foundational, not superficial. Number two, theological and moral differences. The Mesopotamian stories involve multiple deities, some people say gods, acting out of annoyance, fear, and regret. Bereshit or Genesis presents one sovereign Elohim acting with moral purpose. In Gilgamesh and Atrahasis, I definitely don't know how to say the word, but I studied up on that little part. Humanity is destroyed for being noisy. In Genesis or Bereshit, humanity is judged for violence, corruption, and moral collapse. The Mesopotamian deities panic during the flood and depend on sacrifices afterward. Elohim remains in control and establishes a covenant. No ethical transformation follows the Mesopotamian flood. Bereshit or Genesis introduces accountability, restraint, and a binding covenant with humanity. These distinctions reveal that Genesis or Bereshit is not mythological, but ethical and covenantal in nature. Number 3, only got a few more, y'all. It's going to be quick. Written date versus origin of tradition. It is often claimed that because the earliest written Mesopotamian tablets predate the finalized written form of Bereshit or Genesis, the biblical account must be derived from them. This reasoning confuses written preservation with origin of tradition. Ancient cultures, keep that in mind, you all. Ancient cultures preserved history orally for centuries before committing it to writing. We just heard Chief Prince talked about ISUBK. They could have been formed in 78, I think he said, but it wasn't in writing more than likely in 80 to 81. That was a thought, but that's the same thing that's being said right here. Ancient cultures preserved history orally for centuries before committing it to writing. The existence of older tablets does not prove an earlier origin of the event itself, only earlier inscription. Number 4, Gilgamesh is not the earliest flood account. The Epic of Gilgamesh itself is not the earliest flood narrative. It borrows from the Etrahasis, I'm sure you're going to correct me, Chief Prince, epic and earlier Sumerian flood traditions. Therefore, appeals to Gilgamesh as the original are already flawed. Shared ancestral memory. This is important, not borrowing. If a catastrophic flood occurred in the ancient Near East, it would have been remembered by all surrounding cultures. Different societies preserve the memory according to their theological frameworks. Genesis or Bereshit presents the same memory refined through moral clarity and covenantal purpose. Rather than borrowing from Mesopotamia, the Genesis or Bereshit account confronts and corrects pagan theology by stripping away chaos. I know you're going to speak on that. Fear and divine weakness. Almost done, you all. We got 3 more. Archaeology and the nature of the flood. Archaeology supports evidence of massive regional flooding in Mesopotamia. Bereshit does not require a modern scientific concept of a globe-spanning flood, but describes total devastation of the known world of humanity at that time, so that region. This aligns with ancient Near Eastern perspective. Number 7, we got 8 of them. We got 7, we got a conclusion. Why Genesis or Bereshit stands apart. Genesis or Bereshit uniquely introduces moral accountability, limits divine violence after the flood, and affirms the value of human life. These elements do not evolve naturally from myth. They reflect intentional preservation of ethical history. Conclusion. The claim that Genesis or Bereshit copied the Epic of Gilgamesh oversimplifies ancient history and ignores profound theological differences. The Genesis or Bereshit flood account represents a corrective and morally coherent preservation of an ancestral memory, not a borrowed myth. Similarity demonstrates shared history. Difference reveals truth claims. This document may be used as a reference response when confronted with claims that the Genesis or Bereshit account is dependent upon or invalidated by Mesopotamian flood narratives. And with that, what are your thoughts, Chief Prince?
Yeah. And we spoke, like I said, we already spoke about this, so I'm not gonna necessarily come from the same exact angle that I did earlier, but I'm gonna say I'm gonna start by saying this.
I'll be right back. Go ahead, take the floor. I'll be right back.
There's definitely a point that I think gets overlooked very often when it comes to these type of topics, and that is we tend to oversimplify. There's a tendency among and I'm only going to speak concerning Israelites, obviously, because we don't necessarily have a dog in any other people's fight, but pertaining to Israel, we tend to look at these things and say, or not just Israel, but even so-called African Americans who are not in this particular walk, not in the path of the Torah, their argument, especially if they're coming from, let's say, like a Pan-African Kemetic science or Black studies framework, they have a tendency to suggest that the Bible, or at least the biblical flood narrative, is plagiarized, just like everything else is plagiarized. And myself and Chief Prince Shema, we spoke about this earlier, and that is we have to start using words correctly. If we're going to say that the biblical narrative is a plagiarized version of something, we got to stop and realize what we're saying. We understand, or we should understand, that the term plagiarized means and implies what? It means that I took a particular document and simply put my name on that document, and I'm claiming authorship of the document. That's what plagiarism is. Plagiarism is taking the document in its original form and claiming authorship. If the Bible is plagiarizing another text, they don't realize that they're ultimately admitting that the Bible is right, that the Bible is correct. Because if I plagiarized the Gilgamesh epic, and if the Gilgamesh epic is correct, then that means that the Bible perspective is correct, because that's what plagiarism would be. So we're not talking about plagiarism. What we're really talking about is, and he read that in the document. We're talking about collective memory. If you take 10 people and tell them to describe, once again, what happened on the morning of September 11, 2001, you're going to get 10 different accounts of what happened. The central pieces, or the central tent poles of that event is going to be clear. But some people may say, well, no, I don't recall seeing planes. I just heard explosions. Some people might say, well, I didn't see the actual event. I saw it on the TV, and I saw the planes on the TV. Then you'll see people that'll say, well, I didn't see this. I wasn't there. All I heard was I just saw the building collapsing. So there's going to be differences in testimony. But the one thing that is obvious is that on that day, those buildings exploded and they crumbled to dust. If somebody writes a newspaper article, or let's say if one news station, let's say ABC, reports it, and then NBC also reports it, does that mean that NBC plagiarized it from ABC? No, it does not. It means that 2 or 3 or 4 news sources are analyzing the same event, and they are reporting what information they have at that moment. This is similar to how the ancient world operates. And if we are Israel and we understand and we continue to say that the Most High Yah, or Haya, whatever have you, is the God of all times, then we would have to assume that the children of Noah, Shem, Ham, Yafet, all of these individuals would have been given the Most High's instructions on some level. And if they received his instructions, we know how people can get sometimes. They start going off on tangents, and they start believing what they want to believe and modifying this and this, whatever the case may be. But you're always going to find these tent poles that all of these groups agree on. This is what the Gilgamesh epic was. All Mesopotamian tribes of people all had a record of the flood. How they describe the flood is a different story. How they, what do they say was the source of the flood? Was it just, was it the Most High who brought the flood, or was it the, what, or the goddess Tiamat? Did she drop the rain, drop water down from her? There's a lot of different stories and narratives how the Mesopotamians understood this particular event, but they understood it from the eyes of individuals who had abandoned the original understanding of the Most High. I wanted to bring out an example of this. It's not a biblical example, and so for those individuals who are listening now or may listen afterwards, please bear with the example because I know that's not what Israelites normally do. But I want to talk about real quick the Islamic deity. For those individuals who are aware or are knowledgeable of Islam, they have what is called the 99 attributes of, and I'm going to say it just for the sake of the discussion, the 99 attributes of Allah. And those attributes, some of them are Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim, Al-Tawheed, Al-Rahamim, Al-Hirat. I mean, you have what they call the 99 attributes. And these are all, again, attributes and different elements on how, quote unquote, Allah expresses himself. However, prior to the arrival of Muhammad and the arrival of Waraka, his uncle-in-law, and Khadijah, prior to the arrival of the Ebionites who migrated into Arabia, those were not the 99 attributes of Allah. They were the 99 partners of Allah. All of those attributes were deities of their own. And so what happened is that what they call the pre-Islamic Arabs, and they call it the dark ages of the Arabs, what they call the days of ignorance. That's what Muslims call the time period prior to Muhammad. They call it the days of ignorance, when the various Islamic or the various Arabian tribes they did not stick with the original idea of monotheism and that their earlier ancestors had subscribed to. They had fell into polytheism, just wild polytheism. And so what they ended up doing was they took the elements, the attributes of quote unquote Allah, and made them into its own separate deities. But then we find out that it wasn't just the Arabs who did this. Again, all Mesopotamians did it. The Canaanites, they did it. The Arameans, they did it. The Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, all of the groups, all of these groups in the known world, they took the power of the Creator and turned those powers into actual deities. This is why Elohim goes from meaning powerful or full of power to gods. This is ultimately what you saw with the Gilgamesh epic. This is them taking the power of the primordial creator that we always talk about, the Most High, the primordial creator, taking the elements of the creator and turning them into gods themselves. And so now, if we say that, oh yeah, God is merciful. Well, no, God is not merciful. God is God. But merciful, that's another God. That's Al-Rahim, a whole nother God. So if God is happy, we don't say, oh, God is pleased with us. No, that happiness is a completely different deity now. This is what happened in Hinduism. So this is we find this narrative is interwoven in all of these ancient societies, but all of these ancient Shemitic, Hamitic tribes of people. They all got away from the original plan of the Most High and went into their own polytheistic way of expression, which brings us back to why Israel was chosen to begin with. We were chosen to bring the Shemitic peoples back to the original order, which is another story for another time, I suppose.
Yeah, we don't want to give them everything now. We got a lot to bring out in Sage Talk. You all, man, we appreciate you all tuning in. Chief Prince, of course, always appreciate you bringing your wisdom, your knowledge, and your sageness.
Bruh.
I had to laugh because I know you was like, what? To the conversation, man. This is amazing. And I was tempted. I wanted us to go more into this, but I think that topic we'll have to woven it out or see how we want to bring it out. But you kind of gave them a little taste right there when you told them that the Most High wanted us to bring the Shemitic individuals back to the understanding that was given to their father. So, and to them. So, we don't got to get into that now, but you all, if you haven't done so and you're on YouTube right now, make sure that you like, share, subscribe. If you're on Facebook, go ahead, leave some messages, some comments, your thoughts, and we'll get back to you on it, see what you have to say. Answer any questions if we can answer it right now. But if you are watching later, make sure that you subscribe. All right. Any closing words, Chief Prince?
Indeed. I want to, I guess it's actually appropriate to end with one of my favorite scripts. This comes out of Ben Asira, or aka Ben Sirach Ecclesiasticus, chapter 3. I believe I want to say it's verse 3. Verse 3. And it says, Mechabed av yechaper awanatau, umeka et avil kim chalel shem el. One who honors his father atones for his sins, but one who angers his father is like one who profanes the name of Elohim. And for me, I've always connected that not just simply to the man or the men who impregnated our mothers and brought us forth, but to the elders who came before us, who are responsible for our existence spiritually, intellectually. That when we honor them, that is also an atonement for sins. That's how we clean up the mess that we are in, by going back to those who came before us. And I want to just say this, just to give some context again to Abba Bibbens. I am not suggesting, and neither should any of us suggest, and especially anyone who reads the book, I am not suggesting that everything that Abba Bibbens said was scripturally sound. I'm not saying that everything was scripturally sound. What I am saying is that everything that Abba Bibbens taught, he taught from the understanding that he had in the 1940s, in the 1950s, the 60s. He did the best that he could with what he had. Mm-hmm. Our job is to go back to those who came before us and say, okay, whether they were right or wrong or partially correct or whatever the case may be, they did the work. What are you now doing?
That's right.
So this is how we honor those who came before us. This is how we honor our patriarchs. We should not be still be talking about, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They've been established their legacy. We have to go through all of our ancient, you know what I'm saying, ancient peoples, ancient fathers and mothers, and go back and give them that honor, not just in word, but in deed. Look at what they did and say, now, how can I build on top of that? They gave us the tools. They
Mm-hmm.
gave us the blueprint. They gave us the blueprint. So let's honor those who came before us, not just with words, but with how we are building going forward. They gave us the blueprint, they gave us the foundation, they gave us the first 3 floors. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's continue to build the building.
That's right. All right. All right, you all. We're going to get ready and close out. If there's any, we have topics we're going to be bringing forth, but if you have any topics you may want us to consider, you can email us at houseofbalance12@gmail.com, and just in the subject box, make sure you put say, oh wow, you know it's I'm tired. Sage Talk. Sage Talk, and just let us know. But we will be bringing out a lot of different things, these segments, and we appreciate you all tuning in. We hope that it's something that you grasp that can provoke thought and provoke change. And until next time, may the Most High bless and guard each and every one of you. Yabarekum Yahweh wa Yishmarekum. Shalom, shalom.
Hallelujah. Shalom.
I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. I see a dream, that dream is green, and I don't mean material things. Freedom to the land, child, woman, and man, as we take up for what we stand. Better days and better nights, as we stand and unite. We're one and the same. Why is it so hard not to point and to blame? Better sheet, get our houses in order, and we'll see the peace. There are steps that we must take if we wanna see.
I see my people rising, no more stopping us. A couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us.
The sake of us, the sake
I
of
see
us.
my people rising, no more stopping us. A couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us. No more feeling, telling me and beneath. What a beautiful moment, and a sight I can't wait to see. Even if I miss it, at least I wasn't part of the mission. Changing lives of men, women, and children. All glory goes to He that causes us all to be. Oh, and if they're thinking we can, we show them that. Just as long as we stand, a monument. We the people can't be broken as long as we stay focused. I see my people rising, no more stopping us. A couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us. For the sake of us. I see my people rising, no more stopping us. A couple billion acres across America, us. The peace rose for the sake of us. I see my people